Hi, Kragen. How's it going? Let's unmute.
I
Unmute.
am.
Yeah.
There we go.
How's it
Can you hear me
going?
Hey,
now?
how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Very good.
Good,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Where are you right now exactly?
I'm at home. I live in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is a state in the southern part of the United States.
Great, great.
All right.
We talked like 1 month ago with David.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, he was moved to Florida.
That's right. Yeah, I
Nice
just got off
weather.
the phone with him a little while ago.
Yeah. And how's it going there?
It's going okay. This state does not have as many restrictions as California and some of the other states, but you know, everybody's just being cautious and trying to socially distance and all that stuff. Everything's fine
Yeah.
though. Everything's pretty much normal these days.
Oh, okay.
At least normal for the last year.
Yeah. The new normally.
Yeah.
Something like
So
that.
everything is open. You don't have to wear a mask or anything like that outside.
Oh, we have to wear masks. Yeah. We don't wear masks outside. If we're just
Okay.
like walking out or we're going to the dog park or anything like that. We have to wear masks when we go inside to shop at stores, and you know, restaurants
Yep.
are open, bars are open. I don't know if music venues are open. I'm not really sure. I don't follow the local music scene all that much, to be honest. There isn't much of a metal scene here. There's
Okay.
just, you know, there are some bands, but I haven't really heard of any shows going on. I think that stuff, really larger gatherings, just can't happen yet. So
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of music are over there in your area? If there's no...
well, like I said, I mean, there are some metal bands, but it's kind of like an underground, like death metal and sort of more sludgy sounding stuff. There's a lot of blues and jazz and stuff that you would kind of expect in the South.
Okay.
That's kind of more what the normal local music scene is here.
Mm.
And you used to hear all metal stuff?
Here?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I actually just moved here about 5 years ago. I spent most of my adult life and teenage years in Southern California in Los Angeles. So I grew up in the 80s metal scene of Los Angeles. So I heard lots
we
of
want to
metal.
know a little bit about that.
What's that?
We want to know about that, about the first generation of thrash metal.
Well, I mean, the early thrash metal in the Los Angeles area where I was kind of I was a little too young to see like Metallica before they moved up to the Bay Area and stuff like that. But you know, what I grew up with is I would see like bands like Dark Angel all the time. You know, the sort of other there was a whole scene there that was thrash and death metal and stuff like that, but it was underground. You know, Hollywood was dominated by more the hair metal bands and hard rock bands and stuff like that. So my early thrash band PSYCHOSiS, we used to play even in Hollywood. But you know, you would post your flyers on, like, walk down Sunset Boulevard, for example, and post your flyers on all the telephone poles. And when you walked back, they would be covered up by poison flies or something like that. So thrash metal was not very big in Los Angeles. There was a big underground scene, but it was mostly like places like the Country Club, which was in the Valley, or in Orange County. There was a place called Jezebel's. There were a whole bunch of these like kind of underground metal places. So I would go to see shows at those places all the time. Whether it was bands that were touring and coming through town, or more local bands like Dark Angel. I mean, they were like one of my favorite bands when I first, you know,
why?
heard that, them and all the Bay Area bands. You know, I think my band would have done a lot better if we had gone 500 miles north to the Bay Area, but you know.
Yeah. How did you start with Hidden?
It's an interesting story, actually. I was playing in my band Prototype, and that started in like mid 90s and is still going. But we were looking for a separate singer at one point, and I asked a friend of mine that worked for one of the metal labels, like if he had a recommendation, and he recommended Dave from Heathen. So we actually got in touch with David, and he came down and he auditioned for Prototype. And this was right after Thrash of the Titans, when Heathen had gotten back together to do the benefit for Chuck Billy. And he came down and a couple of times actually, and auditioned for us, and it didn't work out. But when Heathen needed a guitar player in 2007, he called me and the other guitar player and asked us if either one of us would be interested in going up to audition. And I said yes, and I learned I think it was about 5 songs, and went up and auditioned, and they asked me during the audition if I would join the band. So it was pretty cool. I mean, one of my all-time favorite thrash bands, being able to, you know, join them, play with them, write music for them. So it's been great.
Wow.
Yeah, so that must have been quite surreal to play for a band that you've listened to for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
And
I mean, just playing those songs, you know, I mean, a couple of the songs I learned were from Victims of Deception. I learned a couple from Breaking the Silence. I think I maybe learned like 6 or something. I learned a couple from their demo at that time, 2005 demo. It was weird playing the songs with a band that, you know, I mean, I bought the tapes when they came out, you know, or the CDs, or when.
So you were really a fan of the band.
Oh yeah, big fan of the band. I loved all of those bands from that scene. You know, I remember hearing Exodus. I remember hearing Bonded by Blood before it came out.
Wow.
It was available on the tape trading scene before the album was actually printed. So, you know, and I loved it. I wore out my 2 cassette copies of that, and, you know, I have 2 different early CDs from that album. You know, I mean, I loved all of that stuff. So it was really cool to be able to, you know, meet those guys and, you know, get to play music with them, for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, even just, you know, afterwards, being able to play with Exodus and fill in for Gary for 6 years. I manage Exodus. You know, I mean, I told my wife the other day, when I was a teenager, if I looked at my cell phone, which didn't exist when I was a teenager, but if I had looked at my cell phone and all of the recent calls that I had, I would have not believed that I was talking to these people on a regular basis, you know? So
yeah, that's amazing.
It's pretty cool. I have to pinch myself sometimes.
Yeah, these days when I was trying to get in contact with you, I was checking. Okay, I saw this guy playing in Exodus, but he's also the manager, because it's Exodus is like I don't know, it's like a school of thrash guitarist.
Yeah. I mean, it's been great. I kind of transitioned from playing with the band to working on management stuff for them. So it was really cool. I also manage Heathen, and I manage a couple of younger bands. I manage Hatriot, and I manage War Curse that just signed to Metal Blade. And I work with a lot of other bands too. I don't officially manage them, but, you know, working with a Toxic and Atrophy and a bunch of bands that I kind of grew up listening to. And it's been really cool. It's been fun. I like doing the behind the scenes work too, you know, not just playing.
Yeah, we are interested about that, because when we talked with David, he told us something about the early days of Hidden, and we asked why Hidden didn't you know, like grow like a big band for those days, you know, the early days. He talked a little bit about the record label of the management, something like that. How do you think it's so much important that a musician like you is the manager right now of a band?
Well, I mean, it's ultimately the thing is that the band has to trust that the manager has their best interests at heart. And I've known the guys for a long time now, and they, there's a level of trust that's been built up where they know that I have their best interests at heart. And I think it's sort of the same thing for Exodus. They know how much I love their band, and I want them to be successful as individuals and as a band. They're all my friends. So I want them to be successful, and I think that that's an important thing that maybe was missing in the early years. I know that they had some great managers like Debbie Abono.
Mm-hmm.
And they also had some not so great managers. And I think that sometimes the business decisions that are made when you're a band can affect the sort of trajectory of the band. And then also just consistency, which Heathen has been bad at. Heathen has not been consistent over the years. An album in '87 and then wait 4 years, and then an album in '91, and then thrash metal kind of died.
Yeah.
And then when the band got back together in 2001, they started working on demo stuff right away. But I mean, this band is notoriously slow. And so again, after the 2010 album, I had music ready to go for the next record. Wow. In 2012 and 2014. Yeah. I pretty much had most of Empire of the Blind written already. So we just, through a series of sort of unfortunate events, which were fortunate for some of us, I got to play with Exodus, but that sort of delayed everything. Yeah, but that just sort of delayed everything. And I think ultimately what we need to get better at is being more consistent with releasing material, especially in these days where the internet and social media is prevalent. I mean, to wait too long, everybody forgets about you. Yeah. An album cycle that would have been normally like a year of people being excited about it is now 3 months, and then it's over. So, our album came out in September, and by the end of the year, it was done. We were, people had sort of moved on. Of course, they remember it and they like it and they listen to it still, but it's not, the hype isn't there anymore, and we couldn't tour. So, I think bands are going to have to adapt and probably come out with more music more regularly than they have been in the last few years. There's been a tendency with bands to, because they don't make money on the albums anymore. Yeah, they make money on touring.
Changed a lot.
Yeah, so they focus now on the touring. And the album is more or less like a requirement to, okay, well, we haven't released an album for a while. We got to release one so we can go out on tour. And consequently, I think what happened, at least for me, is I saw a sort of decrease in the quality of new music that was coming out in this kind of music for a while. It felt like we have to get something out. But it wasn't like I have to get something out that's amazing. It was like, we have to do this so we can go back out on tour to keep the machine of the, sort of band running. And I think bands are going to have to adapt now. I think they're going to have to come out with more stuff more regularly. And there's going to have to be a certain level of quality, because ultimately nowadays there is 100 times more music to listen to than when we were younger. There aren't just a few record companies that have a roster of artists. There are many record companies, and then there are self-releases, and there's a lot of competition. And I think it's harder these days to stand out against the competition. So bands are doing whatever they can to sort of find a way to get around that.
So speaking of the last album, you mentioned that you didn't get a chance to tour. Do you have any idea when that will be? Has it been pushed back? Will you go back into the studio to write something else and then tour with that album, playing the other album songs as well? Or what's happening there?
Probably the most likely scenario, honestly. Everything that was rescheduled from last year to this year is now being rescheduled to 2022.
Yeah.
And we're seeing festivals all, canceling or postponing again. And for us, I would like to get back into the studio and put out another record. As all of these bands, as the guys in them are getting older, it's going to be harder and harder to do like the heavy touring. Touring is a double-edged sword. So there's this amazing component of being able to go everywhere and play shows and interact with the fans, and it's all that part of it is amazing. The travel though it's hard on people. People get sick all the time, and the travel it'll wear you out. I mean, just the rigors of it. Just for us to do a South American tour, for example, I mean, literally the schedule is you fly from show to show, you get there, you eat something, you basically, if you're lucky, take a nap, you play the show, you go back to your hotel for 2 hours, sleep, get up, go to the airport, fly to the next show, and it's crazy hard on
It's
people,
insane.
So that obviously that it's less rigorous in other places, when you have a tour bus and all of that stuff. But I think ultimately what we're going to end up seeing is less extensive touring and more music from the bands. And ultimately, that in a way, it's sort of like back to how it was in the 80s. I mean, in the 80s, what would happen is the bands would, and early 90s, they would record an album, they would go out, they would do a US tour and a European tour, and they would maybe, if they were lucky, go to Japan or somewhere else, and then they would go home, and then they would write another record, and they would do it all over again every year and a half or 2 years, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we're on the fourth leg of our European tour, and we just came back from India and China, and I mean, bands didn't do that. They didn't spend years and years on the road unless they were Metallica and could afford to do that. I mean, ultimately, touring is also expensive. I mean, renting a bus and all the stuff that goes into it can be really pricey to do it. So I think we're going to see more music and less extensive touring, but we'll see. I mean, who knows? Every band is going to be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been in South America touring?
With Exodus, yes. Yeah, I've been to South America with Exodus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 2015. We did a South American tour. And then they did another one in 18 maybe, when Gary was with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you been to Australia?
Yes. I did the Soundwave Festival and
oh, nice.
shows that were surrounding it. That was also that must have been 2015 also. That's a crazy story. I got a phone call at 8:30 in the morning from Lee. And I had done one tour with Exodus prior to that for the Exhibit B album in Europe, and that was in 2013. So I hadn't played any of the songs or done anything for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
He called me at 8:30 in the morning. This was like, I think Soundwave was in January of time.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Mistaken.
Yeah, summer. Yeah.
He called me and he was like, "Hey, can you go to Australia with Exodus?" I said, "Sure, no problem. When?" "Tonight." And I was like, okay. So I was doing some freelance work, and I basically bailed out of that and spent the day packing and practicing. And there were 2 songs that I didn't know, from the new, because Blood In, Blood Out was new at that point. And yeah, it was insane.
That's
But
crazy.
we had a couple of great festival shows. I think we played before Judas Priest, which was amazing. And then we did some off date shows with Fear Factory.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a
Awesome.
cool experience.
Brilliant.
We talked our tour bus driver, or our bus driver, not really tour bus, it was like more like a mini bus. We talked her into driving us to the Gold Coast one day.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
she wasn't supposed to, but she said, "Yeah, fuck it, let's go." So we went there and we hung out on the beach basically for the day, which was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you can enjoy traveling when you're on tour, like that time.
It just depends. I mean, it depends on what it is. There are some times where you finish a gig, and as soon as the crew loads out, you have to go, and it's a 14-hour drive somewhere, and you're basically trapped on the bus for 14 hours. So there are those times, and then there are other times where it's like, oh, well, we're playing in Barcelona and we have the day off before, so we can go to the beach and hang out and enjoy it. And we've been, we try to maximize those times. It just depends on what the travel schedule is, really.
So how do you normally spend that time on the bus, on those 14-hour bus rides? What do you normally do to pass the time?
What I ended up doing most of the time is I would stay on my American time schedule. So I would basically stay up until the morning in Europe, go to bed when it would be, time to go to bed at home, and then get up in the afternoon like it was morning my time. It was a way for me to sort of get avoid jet lag. And we just stay up and hang out, listen to music, drink, play Uno. I mean, whatever we do to pass the time on the Exodus bus.
Yeah.
and then the rest, and then sleep. And I don't sleep well on the bus, so it's like, just kind of lay there.
Do you ever write stuff when you're on tour, like on the bus, getting ideas for songs and stuff like that?
It can be hard. It can be hard to find a place. What we end up doing on the buses a lot of times is cram the bus as full of people as possible, whether that means sharing with another band or whatever. And it's a way to save money. So it's not like you have anywhere private where you can go and sit. There's somebody everywhere.
Yeah.
So it can be hard to write. Whenever I've been able to write anything on tour, it's mostly been at the venue, at sound check, or finding a quiet place at the venue and grabbing my guitar and sitting somewhere. I wrote parts of The Blight on tour, but it was more like coming up with the idea and then remembering it and then going home and really working everything out.
And how do you remember it? Do you have like a voice recorder or
voice memo on the iPhone?
Yeah, nice, classic.
It doesn't even have to have an amp. I'll put the phone on my leg, hit record, and as long as I can hear what I'm, even acoustically, as long as I can hear what I played, just to remember the idea, then that's it.
Okay.
Cool.
Then the Bay Strikes, the last tour. That was your last tour with the Exodus?
The Bay Strikes Back tour, actually, I didn't do that tour.
No.
Gary did that tour.
Oh, Gary.
In Europe. And I had done another leg of that tour, but not that one. That was the last Exodus tour before COVID. And those guys literally came home the day before all flights were closed. So they just barely made it back.
Wow.
Yeah, it was with Testament and Dead Angel, isn't it?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, many people seek that tour.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing about touring is like, when there's something like this virus that's going around, you're exposed to it everywhere, whether it's at a meet and greet or, people at the working at the local people working at the venues or, interacting with fans. I mean, it can be anywhere, I tend to get sick on tour all the time, and it's just from the rigors of touring. It just wears down your immune system, and then all of the interacting with with people. I don't I'm not one of those people that will go hide on the bus. I go out and talk to the fans and, you know,
Yep.
hang out and even go to the merchandise booth and, you know, meet people. So it's you're exposing yourself to that possibility of getting sick for sure.
Yeah, that's bad. Well, I'm in South America in Patagonia right now, which is
Oh, okay.
in the end of the world.
Yeah.
We want to invite you, but for sure, just planes here. You know, it's not like bus, because from city to city, it's like 24 hours of bus or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure, you're gonna be sick. Do you like the meat? To eat meat?
Like Argentinian?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Argentinian steakhouses. We went there when we were there.
Okay, that's one more reason to come here.
We're Lee and I especially are all about that. Like a good steak or a good like grilled meat. It's wonderful.
How do you mentioned Lee? How do you work with him? Because it looks like you are a very strong team. HEATHEN,
Yeah,
it works like so nice, man.
yeah. I mean, what's great is, you know, he and I developed a really great relationship. I mean, he's one of my really great friends, and playing wise, you know, we just hit it off. We're a good team in terms of playing together, and we've got a lot of experience. You know, we toured together a lot with HEATHEN, and then I toured a lot with him with Exodus. And you know, you kind of when you're touring like with Exodus, we did some of the heaviest amount of touring that Exodus had ever done while I was playing with them.
Yeah.
And you know, you develop a really great you know, chemistry playing. You know, even with me and Tom, like I was at, you know, I love playing with Tom, and it was easy, you know, especially after a while. You know, he's such a great drummer, and then you develop this chemistry, and you know, with the whole band, it was great. So, you know, Lee and I benefited from that for sure. And then he and I just kind of think similarly in terms of, you know, music. There's this underlying sort of classical music influence in HEATHEN. It's sort of buried maybe in a way, but he grew up in a household where you know, he had a father that was a conductor and a mother that was an opera singer, and my mom studied opera and music, and you know, used to sing for backup for Dean Martin in the old Hollywood days. And so, you know, we have similar influences, and stylistically, you know, I think we're able to play off of each other well because of that. You know, it's easy when you have a musical connection with somebody. It's easier to play music with them, you know.
Yeah.
And was that connection immediate? Do you get that as a musician? Do you get that connection immediately, or you were saying before sometimes it can develop over time once you get to play with each other a bit more?
Yeah,
you
well,
understand each other a bit more.
I think I can't speak for him exactly, but I think when I went to audition for HEATHEN, I think that he recognized that it would be a good match. You know, I think you can see that you can sort of get that immediate thing, but it takes time to sort of develop. You know, you have to get to know the person, and then you have to get to know like stylistically what they're looking for or what you're looking for. And like I said, I think in this case, you know, it was a good fit. You know, I mean, stylistically, we have a lot of similar tastes, and there are differences too. You know, I like stuff he doesn't like, and vice versa. But that's a way, you know, we have enough similarities where it can kind of lock in together, and we, you know, we play similarly as well, rhythms especially.
Right. And
Yeah.
you write music together?
No, I mean, we when we did the Evolution of Chaos album, I was a producer for the video game company Activision at that time, and I worked there for like a decade. And what I would do when I joined HEATHEN is I would work Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday morning I would fly up to the Bay Area,
Okay.
And then I would get off the plane and go to rehearsal. And then we would rehearse, and then I would stay at Dave's overnight, and then we would rehearse again on Sunday, and then I would fly home and then go back to work on Monday. And that we did that while we were writing, and then while we were recording The Evolution of Chaos. So we got to actually all play the songs together, and it was kind of more like the old days. We didn't sit and write together necessarily. We would write separately, but then come together, and like we could enhance each other's music a little bit by adding some element to it. For example, I would add an overdub to one of his songs, you know, some layer that would sit on top of what he came up with, and vice versa, kind of thing. On the new album, we really didn't have that luxury. We're sort of all spread out all over the country. You know, the drummer's in New York. I moved to Arkansas. Dave now lives in Florida. Lee's the only one that's still in the Bay Area. The bass player's in LA. And so it wasn't really possible for everyone to get together. But what I started doing several years ago was learning how to use the recording technology on the computer to be able to map everything out. So that's what I did with all the demos that I did for the new record. Is I would map out everything and essentially then just send it off to the guys and get their feedback on it. You know, there was one song, for example, that we left off the record that we didn't record, and it just didn't quite fit with the other stuff. There was another song which ended up being the title track, where the guys were like, the music is cool, but I don't like the vocals, you know, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I went back and ripped that song apart and rearranged it and put all new vocal melodies and lyrics and everything on it. So there's collaboration there, but it's not sort of the old school way where you sit down and you write together, you know. And then when you get in the studio, there's even a different thing. You know, Lee would say, I hear this thing on top of this song, you know, can I try it? I'd say, yeah, go for it. Let's try it. Let's make it, you know. We're very open in that way, where we don't have an ego. It's kind of like, if you have a better idea, let's hear it. Let's make it the best that it can be. And I think that's a good way for collaboration in the studio. Is to just be open to trying different things to make the song be the best that it can.
And what program are you using to map out the songs?
Well, I mean, you know, most people record with Pro Tools these days. I actually, I'm a long time Sonar user, which was made by a company called Cakewalk. They're all more or less the same. It's just what you're used to. And now I think Sonar and Cakewalk got bought out by another company, and now I think it's called BandLab or it's some dumb name, but it's the same software. And it's any like that, you know. I mean, I after I worked for Activision, there was a period of time where I was a freelance video game editor, and what I did was I would edit the voiceovers for all the dialogue in the games, and I would use whatever software. I didn't care. I would use an old Sony, what was that called? Sony Soundforge or whatever. It didn't, that stuff, like, I'm pretty good with technology. So ultimately it's like, once I learn where everything is, they're all basically, they do the same thing. So so I use Sonar, and I would record, you know, my rhythm tracks, and I would record fake bass and record vocals, and, you know, program the drums and try and get everything mapped out. And then we would make adjustments as we needed to, whether it was after discussing it with the guys or even in the studio. You know, I might program something for the drummer that's impossible, you know, because I'm not a drummer. You know, and we go through it, we figure it out, and he might come up with something really cool, and then I would go home and I would change the guitars to work with it, you know, after the drums were recorded. So
I guess it's a matter of letting the song evolve and breathe and kind of take shape. And
it's not the way that I used to write. Honestly, the way I used to write was more like, hey, I have a whole bunch of riffs I think go together, and the vocals were like an afterthought. And I think most thrash metal was kind of written like that back in the day. And now I have a much more of a song approach. And there will be times where I have a riff for a chorus, for example, and I'll come up with a melody and I'll say, yeah, man, the melody's great, but one of the chords is clashing, and I'll just change the riff. And it'll still be a good riff, but it will work more with all the pieces. And I think that's really the hardest thing with thrash metal is when you're playing this kind of music, sometimes there's not a key center. And what I mean by that is it's harder to make a vocal melody work. And we have a melodic vocalist. So I want to make sure that David sounds awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I want those vocal melodies to be killer. And sometimes you have to rearrange the riff a little bit and the music to support the vocal. And I think that's really the main difference with like my sort of more recent songwriting stuff is I'm paying attention to the whole picture instead of just my guitar parts, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, I think that's why there aren't more melodic thrash metal bands where there's a melodic singer, to be honest with you, because it's hard. It's hard to fit that in with the music. It's a lot easier just to have somebody growl or, you know, do the Zetro thing or death metal where they're screaming over it or whatever. It's a lot easier because what you're doing in that case is you're taking the melodic aspect of it away and you're doing more of a rhythmic thing with it. And you can, it's easier to fit the rhythm with the rhythm stuff that's going on, but not as easy to fit the melody.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
it is.
So.
I love the David, how he sings, you know, it's quite different to the thrash metal style.
Yeah, I mean he's a real singer. He's a 70s rock era singer singing in a metal band. You know, I think Dio and stuff like that, you know, all the great like singers that sort of all the metal bands emulated there for a little while. And David can do all of that, you know. So with this album, we really my goal was to make sure that everything that he did sounded awesome. And that even included, we tuned down from E to D standard on this album because that's where David's natural vocal range was. Right before he rejoined Heathen, before Victims of Deception, he was in this band called Laughing Dead. And they put out a 3-song demo. And I always loved his voice on that. And I went back before we were working on Empire, I went back and I was like, what is so great about this? Why do I like his voice so much in there? And I checked and they were tuned to D. And it's just his natural range. It just naturally fits. That band had tuned down for David's vocal range and they did it for a purpose. And so anyway, I think that all of these things, you know, we really worked hard to make it so that every bit of the music and all the elements and everything about it were the best that they could be, you know, whether it was the songs or the performances or, you know.
Yeah, and he's also a great frontman.
Yeah, he's
alive.
He's awesome. I mean, I feel bad that we haven't been able to do more, you know, because it's kind of a waste of his talents sitting around waiting for the rest of us, you know. I mean, and he'll tell you the same thing, you know, but he's annoyed that we had to wait so long. But you know, it's, you know, life takes us where it's going to take us sometimes, you know. I think that's one of the things that I've been better at over the years is just I fought against you know, joining another band or anything like that for so long. I was just trying to do my own thing and being headstrong about it. And then when I started to let life take me on the journey a little bit more, it actually, I got further. So I kind of just go with things that come up, you know. If I have opportunities to do projects or whatever, I try to just let them happen, you know, try not to force my own projects so much, you know. If they're going to happen, they're going to happen naturally. And of course I still push to get everything done, but there aren't enough hours in the day to do all the projects that I want to do. So.
Yeah. And now Heathen has the new project is like the live album.
Yeah, so we actually recorded a live album on the Evolution of Chaos tour. It was recorded in Greece. I think it was 2012. And it was enough material to be like a double album. I mean, we made Obituary wait for so long to play after us. I apologized after we got off the stage. But we recorded the concert and we just never finished the project. So that's one of the things that we're working on. We have a bunch of different things in the works right now. We've got that. We've got the Victims of Deception 30th anniversary edition that I'm working on.
With some new songs or new versions.
Well, so far what we've been able to do is we have to license this from Warner Brothers, which owns Roadrunner Records. And so so far what I've been able to do is we've gotten them to transfer the original mixes from the tapes.
Yeah.
So we can do a proper remaster from the actual final mix. A lot of times when you see that albums have been remastered, they'll take a CD that's already mastered and then just make it louder, basically.
Yeah.
And change some frequencies or whatever. With this, we're actually going to basically master it like from the beginning, from the original tape transfer. So that's cool. We've got the original artwork, which was the colors that you've always seen on Victims of Deception. It has kind of like a bluish tone to it, but that's not the original colors of the artwork itself. The artwork was way darker and more ominous looking. It was more blacks and more dark purples and stuff in the colors. So I have the original artwork. David actually has it, but I have a scan of the actual painting. So we're going to be able to present it how it should have been presented. And we've got a bunch of other stuff that we may include as bonus material. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do with that. There's some live tracks that are sort of like soundboard. I've got to listen and see how good quality there are. There are some takes and rough mixes that I have of some of the songs. We may include some of the recovered material, because that recovered EP was actually all recorded at the same time as Victims and then just never finished. So there's a number of things that we're considering adding to it, but we don't know yet. But we're going to try and do CDs and vinyl, and it should be pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of the remaster, are there any elements of the mix that you want to change, or?
Well, we're not going to be remixing it. That's the thing. Sort of the. I think a lot of people, when they hear remaster, they're like, I don't want to remaster, because like maybe they got the Megadeth remasters and you can hear that Dave Mustaine re-recorded some vocals for it. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. What we're going to be doing is the process when you make an album is you make your final mixes. And back in the day, those final mixes would be committed to a tape, basically. And then that tape would be taken over to a mastering lab, and then they would take the final mixes and enhance the overall EQ and loudness and everything to make it so that it was the final product. So what we have is we have those final mixes of Victims of Deceptions that haven't been mastered yet. And we're going to take those. So it'll be the same mix that you've always heard. It's just that it's going to be properly remastered and not just remastered from a CD. So Metal Mind in Poland did a reissue of Victims of Deception a number of years ago, which I have on CD. And it's on a like gold CD and it looks fancy and everybody thought it was remastered. Well, I compared it to the original master. It sounds exactly the same. There's no difference. They didn't do anything to it at all. If they said it was remastered, then maybe they made it a little bit louder. I don't know. But there's no difference in terms of the mastering. What we would do is hope that it would enhance the clarity a little bit. And bring it up to sort of normal, like modern standards of clarity. Modern recording there's much more clarity in it these days, and some people hate that, and they wish that it was an old recording drowned in reverb and everything, which I don't get that. But But that clarity, it can be good and it can be bad in different ways. You know, you don't have the warmth of the old recordings. This way, we're going to have the warmth of the old recording, and it'll be mastered properly. We're probably going to have Zeus remaster it like he did with the Evolution of Chaos, and the album has so much more warmth and dynamics than it did the first time. It's pretty incredible.
So when you say clarity, when you say clarity, are you saying brightness, slightly more bright?
No.
Or is that
basically when you recorded to tape, there was all this analog equipment, and it you know, and sometimes in a good way, it would color the sound. And with the digital recording age, you don't have that warmth. You might have a tube preamp, which is an analog piece of gear that you use, but overall the recording quality is just, there's more clarity to it. So it's not a brightness. It's almost like almost like if you had a speaker in front of you and you put a blanket on top of it, and you heard it was kind of muffly and it sounded like this, and then you took the blanket off and suddenly it was crystal clear. That's what we're talking about. That's kind of the difference. Is those some of those old albums, it sounds like they had a blanket on them, you know, and what we're talking about doing is mastering it so that it's like you take the blanket off and you're like, wow, I never heard them playing this part before like this. It just didn't come out clearly. I always wondered what that riff was, but I couldn't hear it very clearly. It sounded muffled. That's what we're talking about. And it's not remixing it. That was the one thing. We actually had the opportunity to remix it. And I asked Lee, I said, what do you want to do? Do you want me to have them transfer the actual tracks so we can remix it? Or do you just want to remaster it? And he said, out of all the old albums, including Evolution, up through Evolution, he's like, that's the only album I like the mix on. He doesn't like the mix on Breaking the Silence or the Evolution of Chaos. He just doesn't like the way they came out. But with Victims, he loves the way it came out. So he didn't want to remix it. And so we're just, you know, if we could do the same thing with Breaking the Silence, if those tapes didn't burn in a fire, unfortunately, we would actually get all those tracks and remix it from scratch. Because that album, I've heard some of the roughs that they did, and it sounded way heavier and clearer. And not muffly and sort of rock and roll. It kind of has like a rock and roll mix to the Breaking the Silence album, which just doesn't sound like a thrash mix.
And when do you think the remastered version will be released?
Well, it's definitely going to be in the second half of the year at this point.
Okay.
I've really got to drive it forward. When you're dealing with a big company like Warner Brothers and they have a corporate legal team, and you know, it's slow moving. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff in the music business, when you're dealing with the big record companies, things go very, very slowly. So once I feel comfortable that the agreement is all set, you know, we'll start moving forward with everything. I have the elements.
Awesome.
We could start doing it today. I just want to make sure that we're, you know, that everything's good to go.
Yeah, cool. Fair enough.
And at the same time, Kragen, you are working on the new material of HEATHEN?
Yeah, I actually have a whole bunch of music already written. Some of it demoed a little bit, but I have to go back and basically rework a lot of things. I had a hard drive that had all my recording software died. Thankfully, all the files themselves and the recordings are still there, but I lost some pieces of software. So I have to go back, like, for example, with the drum programming software, they don't make the old one that I had anymore. So I have to go back and like relearn how to use some newer piece of software. But, you know, it's just a matter of time before we get everything rolling. And I think I probably have 2/3 of an album. So I'm going to do my best to talk Lee into writing something this time. I tried last time and we ran out of time, but yeah, I mean, ultimately it would be great to have something and be able to record later this year and have a release next year, but we'll see how quickly it comes together. we were even talking about doing an EP for a release later this year. So we'll just see.
Oh, okay, nice.
Wow, awesome.
Some new music, great. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I said, I mean, we really have to be better about putting stuff out more regularly. So
Yeah.
we're going to do our best to make whatever we can happen.
yeah. And how has your history with the Exodus? What did you do the first time?
Meaning like when did I meet the guys and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Uh,
because
I, I
it's like
met
a big
them.
family, you know. It's like hidden and Exodus,
Yeah.
like a big family.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of an outsider to the scene until I joined Heathen because I grew up in the LA area.
Yeah.
So I didn't know those guys from, from back in the day, like Lee does, Lee and Dave, Dave went to high school with Tom, and Kirk Hammett and all those guys. So like there's a connection that those guys have that I don't have with them. But I met them through touring with Heathen. We did a number of tours where we were touring with Exodus and sharing a bus and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it was in 2011, maybe, we did this tour in Europe where it was Sepultura, Exodus, Heathen, and Mortal Sin. And it was and Destruction. They were there too. And Lee was doing double duty, meaning he was playing with Heathen and then playing with Exodus later. And so I learned the song Deranged from Pleasures of the Flesh. And I would go up in the middle of the Exodus set and give Lee a break. I would basically grab his guitar, play Deranged with Exodus, and then give him a little breathers. And so that was my first experience playing with the band, was playing that stuff. And then there would be other times where we did a tour where Rick was filling in for Gary in Europe, and he wasn't available for sound check, so I would play for him at sound check and play Bonded by Blood or whatever. And I just sort of basically just, I started to make little bits of a connection playing wise with the guys at that point. And then they asked me to fill in and do a full tour in 2013 when that was for Exhibit B. And then when they needed somebody to do, more extensive touring, they asked me if I would do it. And I said yes. And, the connection with those guys really built up over those years of touring and the friendship and everything. And I mean, even to a certain extent with Gary, when he wasn't there, I mean, he had to trust that I was doing justice to what he wrote, and what he would normally play. And so there's just, like I said, with Heathen, there's just sort of a trust that built up over the years, and so, I mean, it's been great. Those guys are awesome. I mean, their new record is done and, ready, more or less ready to go. And I was just listening to the final mix of it, of Persona Non Grata, yesterday, and it's killer. I think everybody's going to be stoked with it, and I'll be happy to have a guitar solo on one of the songs. So that's pretty cool.
Great.
Dream come true.
Yeah, it is. But you're an amazing guitarist. I saw some
thank you.
of your videos. Last post of you from your Instagram. Well, I tried to practice, but I'm so bad. So just to talk about music. I say, okay.
Well, I teach too, so I like to, the videos take me a long time to do, just because I'm involved in probably too many projects at this point, between Heathen and managing bands, and I do my guitar books that I release, and I mean, there's a lot of, I have my hands in many things, so the videos, it's hard to find the time, but I like to do them, and I like to hopefully put out stuff that's useful to people,
and both, it's like fans, we appreciate, and also the guitarist appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just hope people find some value in it and find it interesting. They're fun to do.
Yeah, it's great. Did you also write for Exodus?
No, I didn't write anything. Gary wrote all of the songs except one. Lee has had a song that he wrote like years ago for Exodus that was ready to go. And so he wrote one song, Gary wrote all the rest of it. And then there were some lyrical contributions from Zetro, and even Tom wrote some lyrics for one of the songs. So yeah, and Rick and I play guitar solos on one of the songs with Gary and Lee.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Oh, that's because the band sounds so like a big team, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the one thing that's great about Exodus, and I appreciate more now being part of it, is those guys are like a big family. I mean, it's not just the guys that are in the band, it's the guys that used to be in the band, and you know, they still make they are like family, and they treat each other like family. It's not just a business thing, you know.
Yeah.
Those guys are a band of brothers, and they act like it, and so that rubbed off in a big way, and I learned a lot touring with them. You know, I got to see them be a band of brothers, and I saw other bands where they were just it was all business, and they didn't like each other, and you know, I mean, you see all kinds of things out on the road.
Yeah.
It's just work for others.
Yeah, but those guys enjoy it, and they enjoy being with each other, and I think that's what being a band is all about. And it's amazing for a band that's been around 40 something years.
Wow.
That they're still like that. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
And you can feel when you see the band alive.
Yeah,
you can see
absolutely. Absolutely. It's not just the energy with the crowd, it's the energy with each other and interactions with each other. You know, you can just really tell they all like each other, and they want to be there. You know,
yeah,
it's a good thing.
It's a good. How's your relationship with Kirk? It's any relationship about Exodus and Kirk?
I don't have any relationship with him. I've met him a couple of times, but they have a great relationship. I mean, Gary and Kirk especially. I mean, you know, and Tom, those guys were all in. You know, Gary took over for Kirk basically.
Okay. What do you think about other guitarists? What is your influence, or what do you think are the good rhythm guitarist or solo guitarist?
I mean, you know, James Hetfield is the gold standard for thrash metal rhythm guitar playing. I love a lot of the Bay Area guys. Gary has a really interesting and unique style. He does a lot of cool things that other thrash guitar players don't do. I think that's why Exodus sounds different from everybody else. As far as like lead guitar playing and stuff like that, Randy Rhoads, Marty Friedman, Yngwie to a certain extent. I think Yngwie changed guitar forever. No one will acknowledge it because he never wrote a hit song that anybody cares about.
Yeah.
And when I say hit, I mean like Van Halen had hits, you know. But the things that he brought to guitar, sweep picking and all the, you know, 3-note per string guitar scales and classical techniques, essentially, everyone uses that stuff now. Everyone uses it. And so I have to say he's an influence to a certain extent. I love players like Chris Poland and Alan Holdsworth, more jazzy kind of players too. All kinds of different, you know, I mean, I like, you know, a lot of the 80s metal guys like George Lynch and Warren DeMartini, and those guys, people don't play like that anymore. People are too technique oriented, and they do a lot of scales and arpeggios and stuff, but they forget about the rhythmic elements of playing and some of that stuff. So I like to combine everything. You know, I like to have, as I explain to my guitar students, do you want to have a little knapsack that you have over your shoulder with all the techniques you can do? Or do you want to have a big giant bag that you have to drag across because it's so heavy, and you have that many things that you know how to do, techniques and styles and everything? You want to be able to do more, you know. I mean, that's what makes a guitar player well-rounded, you know.
Yeah.
What do you think of Steve Vai?
I think he's great. He's maybe a little too technique oriented for me personally, but his style is unique and it's interesting. And I mean, I could pick up techniques from him, but I don't think I would want to play like him, if that makes sense. I would say the same about a lot of players, you know, where they're amazing players, and I appreciate them and listen to them, but I don't necessarily, you know, there isn't something where I want to, wow, that's fucking incredible. I want to mimic that. There's only there are really, to me, there are really only a handful of guitar players where I listen to them and I'm like, man, I mean modern players where I listen to them, I go, man, that's fucking incredible. Where they're able to marry the technical part of playing and the feel part of playing and all of the different styles, and it doesn't just sound like they're mechanical. Like Jeff Loomis is my age. He's the same age as me. And actually, I think he's maybe a little bit younger. But he's an amazing player. He and I have similar influences. And to me, he's one of the best players of my generation because he can do the technical stuff, but he can play with feel, and he knows how to do bends and vibrato and make it sound like making notes sing, you know, as they say, where it's you know, some players can't do that. They can do all the technical stuff, but they can't do the other stuff.
So Jeff Loomis,
yeah, he was in Nevermore.
Okay.
And he plays guitar for Arch Enemy now and has solo stuff. And
yeah, it's awesome. You talk about all the Megadeth guitarists, because all of them like play thrash metal or quite speed metal at those times in Megadeth, but they play many other kind of music, you know, outside Megadeth. I remember.
Well, yeah, I mean,
from Cacophony to last year playing tango here in Buenos Aires.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I mean, Marty Friedman he has a very unique style because the way he looks at guitar is unique, and a lot of the things that he does, it's not technical as much as it is what I call phrasing, where he just knows, he does some technical things, but it's more about making it sound great and be memorable. Like his solos, you can almost kind of sing them a little bit, you know. And I to me, that's what guitar solos should be. They shouldn't just be a bunch of technical things like to show off. I mean, it's like, who cares? At some point you're like, okay, well, you can do 8-finger tapping, but I don't remember what you just played, you know, like, who cares? So I love his style because of all the little phrasing things that he does, and it's unique, you know. He's got a unique sound. And Chris Poland, the same thing. He came from a jazz background, and a lot of what he does, he plays blues licks, but they don't sound like it at all. And you know, he's an amazing player. I'm going to be releasing the guitar book for Return to Metalopolis.
Wow. It was his first solo album.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, he's a great player. I mean, I got to talk to him on the phone the other day, you know, just about the guitar book. So it's, to me, you know, I'm still a fan deep inside. So I listen to his playing and I'm like, oh my God, that's incredible. Still, you know, still what he does.
Yeah.
So.
Great. So
cool.
John, any things you want to ask?
No, just thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hey, listen, if you guys have a link, you know, for when this interview airs or whatever, please let me know. I'm happy to share it. You know, we've got a Heathen group on Facebook too, which has a couple of thousand of the.
I saw you're the administrator, so you are on the social media. You are the manager of social media. You know, you have a lot of work, man.
Yeah, I get a lot of the, hey man, check your messages, and I'm like, I can't keep up sometimes, you know. I mean, I social media to me is one of those things where I enjoy spending time in the group. Don't get me wrong on this, but a lot of what I have to do is like, it's busy work to me. Like, I have to post, I have to do this, Whereas like with the Facebook group, like there's more of an interaction there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I try to answer people's questions on Instagram. You know, if I post something and people have comments or questions on YouTube, same thing. I answer all the stuff, but it ends up being time consuming, and I don't want to spend all my time on social media. I have to I have work to do.
I understand. I sent you know, to your Facebook, I sent and say, okay, no, it's like 4,000 friends or something. I'm gonna write for other side.
I need to change the Facebook to one of the artist pages or whatever, you know, so that more people can you know, get on there. I haven't had time.
Yeah.
I know. It's still just my personal Facebook page, you know. So I have maxed out or pretty close. And you know, I like Instagram a little bit more, and there's less political stuff. I stopped scrolling through my Facebook feed a long time ago. I'll pick out a couple of things that I like, but otherwise I go on there really to talk about music and connect with the fans or whatever, you know, whatever is positive. I don't like the negative part of it. So
of course.
Yeah, exactly.
We really wanted to know a little bit more about you, you know, about the person behind the stage, what you do, what you like to do, and of course music, the music that we love, and really appreciate your time and your, you know, all the things that you talk to us. And
my pleasure. Thank you for asking me to do it. It's been great. You guys are great interviewers. I got a lot of different questions that I don't normally get, which I always appreciate. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
And we're looking forward to hearing the new stuff whenever that comes out.
It should
stay
be
safe.
You know, it's every Heathen album is different. And you know, I think every time that's some fans are surprised and happy about the changes, and some fans want us to just play Goblin's Blade over and over again. But you know, I think this band is always trying to do something different. So you know, the next album I'm sure will be different as well, and I'll be interested to see how it all comes together too.
Great. We'll wait for that. And of course, we wait for you here with a barbecue, you know, with Argentinian barbecue.
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah. Or Exodus or both.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kragen.
Thank you. You guys have a great
Thank you so much.
Evening or I think it's evening, right?
Oh yeah, it's
on the south end of the world.
It's evening for me. I'm in Budapest in Europe. But yeah, thank you so much. Stay safe.
You too. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.